The disgusting, vile media. The disgusting, vile media that played along willingly. And I get it. Very salacious, so many elements to the story. You're so beautiful. I mean, that was probably your biggest sin in attracting media coverage to this. You know, just you're beautiful, and that will sell papers. And
well, thanks, Megyn.
Yeah, and then like you add in possible sex fiend in like some weird sudden, I don't know what they thought you were doing, an orgy where you slit people's throats. I mean, it was just, none of it made any sense. And as soon as Patrick fell apart as your third partner, you, Raffaele, and Patrick, your boss, he fell apart because of his alibi. Then they just subbed in Rudy. Oh, Rudy was the third guy. And they held her down because why? Because she wouldn't have sex with him? Like, there was nothing. He was making it up as he went along. But the media portrayed you. I mean, there's one of the headlines was satanic sex ritual. Satanic now. Yeah. They called you a she-devil. Certainly the narrative was that you were a whore. The Foxy Noxy thing came from an innocent thing on your own social media about, as I understand it, you as a soccer player and how you were sly as a fox on the field. I can't even understand. I've been attacked by the media in vicious ways, but nothing compares to this.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I wasn't in a place to even defend myself at that point. I was locked away and at the mercy of what the police was releasing to the press. And I'm so glad that you brought up like the claim that I must have cleaned up my DNA, because I remember interviewing Mark Olshacker on Labyrinths, and he said, if Raffaele and I could have somehow selectively cleaned up our DNA from that crime scene and left all of the other evidence there intact, we deserve a Nobel Prize for chemistry.
Right.
But it's interesting because that was like, if you imagine the sort of confirmation bias, the mental gymnastics that my prosecutor had to do to account for the fact that here's this crime scene where there's Meredith's body, Meredith's DNA, and Rudy Gaday's DNA and fingerprints and footprints all over the space, and nothing implicating me or Raffaele. That has to be explained somehow. Well, in his mind, it was, I was somehow able to clean up all evidence, all traces of me, and in order to implicate Rudy Gaday. And I think the thing that like, I mentioned this in the episode of Labyrinths where I talk about Rudy Gaday, because for me, like, and maybe we'll get to this later, but like, for me, I cannot get over the fact that because the police and the prosecution did not want to admit from the get-go that there was no evidence against me and drop the charges and release me and Raffaele from prison, instead of doing that, they actually pursued a case that let Meredith's actual rapist and murderer off the hook.
Yeah.
He was tried separately from me. He was tried before me. The prosecution was not interested in having him be fully responsible for his crimes, so they never charged him to be fully responsible for his crimes. He was
so crazy.
Charged with being a part of the murder but never having actually plunged the knife himself. And so when Rudy Gaday points to that today and says, well, no one says I killed her, someone else killed her. It's like, well, the reason for that is because the police and prosecution were covering their butts.